Welcome here this Sunday morning. My name is Jordan. If you haven't met me, my name is Jordan. It always trips me up when people say, if you haven't met me, my name is something. Because then I'm like, what if I have met you? Is your name different then? So just so you know, if you have met me, my name is still Jordan. So yeah, I'm the youth pastor here, and I thank you guys all for being here to celebrate this holiday weekend with us. I am not talking about Labor Day. I am talking about National Youth Pastor Sunday. Okay, so listen. It's not actually National Youth Pastor Sunday. It's a very unofficial holiday because there's this phenomena that sweeps the nation on holiday weekends when all of a sudden youth pastors are on stage preaching to the whole church. So I thank you for being here to celebrate that with me today. I get to preach in our 1 Corinthians series we've been walking through this summer, the book of 1 Corinthians. We call it that because each week we tackle one chapter, we tackle one verse, and we give you one challenge from 1 Corinthians, and I am up this week. So last week we got to hear Carlos talk about discovering the purpose of God's church and finding out your gift and living it out. The week before that, Chase talked about remembering the Lord, and we took communion together. And I get to unpack chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians with you this week, which is a chapter of the Bible that if you have attended a wedding in your life, you are likely to have heard some of the verses we're going to be walking through today. I actually attended a wedding yesterday, and wouldn't you know, they read from this chapter. So what follows here is, I'm just stealing the sermon that I heard yet. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, we're going to walk through the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 13, verse 1. If you want to throw it up on that screen, it's going to be there. If I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but I didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And so love, we get it right from this verse. Love is the most important thing. Love is the most important thing. Without it, we have nothing. Or actually, he goes as far to say, this is what we have. Look, when the Bible talks about a gong and you have a chance to ring a gong, you bring a gong on stage. So this would be like if I was talking to you and I was like, here's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn that love is the most important thing, and if without it, you don't have anything. So yeah, if we don't have love, that is what it's like. I saw some uncomfy faces in there as I kept banging that thing, okay? It's not a good look without love. That is what we sound like. And that's not a very effective way for us to live our lives, okay? I think it's actually counterproductive. I think less people would want to be around you if that is the kind of person that you were, lacking love and sounding like that. You're not winning anyone to Jesus that way. I actually think it's particularly poignant, the place this falls. Paul just got done talking about the spiritual gifts, and Carlos walked us through some of that last week, and everybody has a role and this and that. And then Paul says, but look, even though you guys are extremely gifted and knowledgeable and you know all these things, you're missing the point if you're not doing it based on love. You're missing out if love is not in it. You can be the most gifted person, you could speak every language. It's just going to sound like that. I won't bang the gong again, but that's what it will sound like. I can explain it one other way, and it's going to go something like this. How many of you guys remember the year 2020 and the great fun we had staying home and wearing masks and all that stuff, right? I know I'm traumatizing some of you probably by reminding you of that. But an interesting thing happened in 2020 when we all stayed home. A lot of people I talked to picked up a new hobby or learned something new, right? Like people got into crocheting, or a lot of the app Duolingo became really popular because people were like, I have all this time. I'm going to learn how to speak a new language. I'm going to find a new hobby. I'm going to pick up a new thing. And I did that too. My hobby was carbohydrates, okay? So listen, there's gonna be a picture. That's me, and I'm very proud of my cinnamon roll that I crafted from scratch. That's a plate of them before they go in the oven. I don't have an after, I don't know why, but I dedicated myself to learning how to make all sorts of things that are heavy on the carbs, okay? So I've perfected a cinnamon roll recipe. There's people in this room who've tasted them. I really do. I stand by them. They're delicious cinnamon rolls. I make them every year at Christmas. I went online. I found a recipe. I tried it, and it failed, and I tried it, and I finally perfected it. Another thing on the list, pizza dough from scratch. So I make my own pizza dough. I actually have a pizza oven now, too. I learned that. And the third thing I wanted to tackle during this time was pancakes, all right? So I didn't want to make box pancakes. I wanted to make pancakes from scratch. And so that was the next thing on my list to learn. And I'm very particular when I follow a recipe, right? I need it to be the exact measurement. I need it to be the exact thing they call for, right? It can't be like, if it calls for cake flour, I need it to be cake flour, not regular flour. I'm a little annoying and detailed in particular, so I found a from scratch recipe. I started working on it. I made sure all the measurements were right. I made sure I had all the right ingredients. And I wanted this to be really good, right? So I wanted to buy the high-end ingredients, right? I wanted the best flour you could find. I wanted the best vanilla. Whatever it called for, I wanted the very best because I wanted these pancakes to blow people away, okay? And so I finally do it. I'm following. I make sure all the measurements are right. I do it. I make the batter. I throw them on the griddle. I grill them up. I get ready to taste it, and I bite into this pancake, and it was horrible, okay? It was so bad, and it was on that day that I learned the difference between baking soda and baking powder, okay? They are different things, okay, in case you didn't know. Maybe you're learning it with me today. One makes your pancake taste great. The other makes it horrible and not edible, okay? So that is what we have if love is our missing ingredient, right? If we have all of the best ingredients, if we do everything right, but we're missing love, we're going to taste like a horrible pancake, or we're going to sound like a noisy gong. The whole recipe is off if you're missing one ingredient. And that's what it's like if we have all the knowledge, all the information, all the experience, all the right answers, but we're missing the ingredient of love. It's so important. Without it, we're just a banging gong or a baking soda pancake. And so since love is so important, I wanted to spend some time this morning to understand what love really is. We're reading a book right now as a staff, and there's a quote in there that I really loved that I want to throw up on the screen. It says, "Love isn't an intellectual theory, it's an embodied way of being." Love isn't an intellectual theory, it's an embodied way of being. Said a different way by one of my favorite modern poets, John Mayer. He says, "Love ain't a thing, love is a verb." Love is a verb. Love isn't something you can just know. It's not something you can just say. Love is a verb. And look, I know we're just getting back to school. Maybe we're not back in school brain, so I'll walk you through what a verb is. I remember from my time in grade school, it's an action word, right? It's a word, it's an action word. It's a thing you do. It's action. It's active. It's an embodied way of being. It's a thing that you do over and over and over again. It is also beneficial in multiple ways, love, that I want to walk through if you're willing to do that with me this morning. And I think we can get them from 1 Corinthians 13. And so what I want to point out this morning is that love is enriching. Okay, love is enriching. I'm going to throw these first couple verses up. "If I could speak all the language of earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I had to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. So those gifts are good and well, and those are all really good things. But if you don't have love in them, you don't have anything. Love enriches the whole package. It makes the whole thing better, right? Just like the right ingredients make the entire pancake taste the way it's supposed to. That's what love does. It enriches everything that you do if it's bathed in love. If you do a good deed just because out of obligation, that's fine. But if you do it because you love someone and you want to do it out of love, the whole deed is enriched. If you're trying to follow Jesus and know him better, and the motivation for it is love, you love Jesus, you want to get to know him better so you can live more like him, that enriches the whole process. If I come home from work with flowers for my wife, and I hand them to her, and she says, "These are beautiful, what are these for?" And I say, "I knew it. I knew what I was supposed to do, and I did it." Just a pro husband tip. That's not really the best answer when she asks you that, okay? Like, it's not. But if I come home with these flowers, and she's like, "What are these for?" And I'm like, "And I know you've been having a rough week, and I love you so much, I just wanted to do something to pick you up." That is going to enrich that whole action, right? Love is enriching. It can change a whole process. So love can enrich the whole thing. It can make the whole thing better as you're living your life. The second thing that love is love is edifying. Love is edifying. Check out the second half of this verse. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 8. It says, "Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies." Edifying is one of those words that if you've been around a church before, you've probably heard a couple times. You might only hear it around church, so let me explain it to you. Or I'll just throw up a different version. I think I should have a different version. But while knowledge makes us feel important, it is love that strengthens the church. And now I actually think even that definition, or that idea, sells it a little bit short. Edify actually means to instruct or improve morally or intellectually, okay? So love can help improve your situation morally or intellectually. And then I got really into pastor mode this week, okay? And I went to the original language, right? And I found the word and some definitions of it in the original language. And I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the Greek word, but what it actually means, one of the literal definitions of it is to build up or construct a building. To strengthen or develop another person's life through love and encouragement is to edify, to help them construct a building. And I just think that is such a cool definition of what love can do. Love literally helps build up the church, right? If you are living your life with love, it will help build up the church. And something I was really excited about as we began this process of leaving our old building and coming here to Great Lakes, in this process of the in-between, I was excited for us to understand better that the church is not a building that we're in, it is the community that we're part of, right? It is people. I'm a huge Marvel movie nerd, and so I think Thor said it best when he said, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. Like, the church is not a building, it's a group of people. And so when we love one another, we are building the church up when love is in our interactions and in our lives. Love is enriching, it makes everything better. Love is edifying, it builds up, it constructs. And here's the third one that I think is really important, is that love endures. Love endures. Remember, Paul just wrote about these gifts that people can have in chapter 12, right? He addresses them again in this chapter. And let's see what he says later on in chapter 13. In verse 8, he says this, prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will become useless, but love will last forever. Love lasts forever. Those gifts that he was talking about have their time and their place. But we learned earlier that if that's all you have, then it's actually not much at all. It's not going to cut it, right? And so this idea of prophecy and speaking in unknown languages had a time and a place, right? There was a moment where if you were trying to communicate to somebody the message of Jesus and you didn't speak the same language as them, the Holy Spirit could make it so that they can understand you. And that's an amazing gift. That's great. However, if I was just walking down the street and I started talking to somebody in a language they didn't understand, that's not super helpful in that scenario. But if I love a person I cross on the street, that makes sense. That will last forever. That's always going to be beneficial. Love lasts forever. Paul actually ends this chapter by saying that 3 things are going to endure forever, and that's faith, that's hope, and that's love. In case you weren't sure, though, he tags it by saying that the most important of these, the greatest of these, is love. So listen, we understand now that love is very important. It's of the utmost importance. If you don't want to be a noisy gong, if you don't want to be a pancake recipe gone wrong, you got to have love. So what does that look like? How do we do that? I have a couple methods I want to explore for that. The first one we're going to explore is, I want to go to 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 and 8. It says this: "Dear friends, let us continue to love one another. For love comes from God. Anyone who loves is a child of God and knows God. But anyone who does not love does not know God, for God is love." God is love. So if you want to know what love is, what is love? Look at God. Look at what he did. Pastor Chase talks about this a lot, but if you want to know more about who God is, you can go to the Gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Those are the first 4 books of the New Testament. They're all firsthand accounts of Jesus' ministry here on earth, and Jesus is God. And so you get to read about how he interacted with people. You get to read about how he loved on people. And if you want an example of what love is, you can look to Jesus in those Gospels. In John 15:13, Jesus says this: "There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." There's a little bit of foreshadowing there, right? Jesus knows he's going to go to the cross. He's going to lay down his life for us. And I just want to pause here for a second and say, I'm up here talking about love and this love that we should show others. But if you haven't experienced that love for yourself, this is what it is. This is what it means. This is the gospel. This is the good news that makes us all part of the same family, is that Jesus died on the cross, taking on all your sin so that you could be in a relationship with God. We were designed to be in a relationship with God. We chose our own way. We sinned. And because of that, God can have no part of sin. So we couldn't be in a relationship with him. But he loved us so much that he sent his son Jesus to die in our place, take the punishment that we deserved, and then rose again 3 days later. And now, all we have to do is believe in him and profess that we want to follow him and give our lives to him. Repent from our sins and follow him. And we can be in a relationship with the God who loves us, the God who created us, and the God we are designed to be in a relationship with. And that is love. Jesus said it: "No greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." That's what love looks like. If you want to learn how to love better, look to Jesus and how he lived his life. In fact, the whole narrative of the Bible, I think, paints this beautiful picture of how much God loves us. What he did in order to save us so that we could be in a relationship with him. Despite man making decisions over and over again to reject God, he still reached into our lives so that we could be in a relationship with him. So if we keep reading in 1 Corinthians 13, we see love described with a bunch of other qualities. So let's take a look at these. It says, love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. What is love? It's patient. Patience with your kids. Patience with your coworkers. Patience with your siblings. Patience with the people you share the road with on your way to work. That's love. I think it's really cool that as he's going to get into this list of all these things that describe what love is, he starts with patience. He starts with patience, like saying, hey, this is going to be a process. It's going to be a journey. And one of the most important things on this journey is that you're going to have patience and be in it for the long haul. You're going to need patience. That is a huge part of what love is. You got to buckle up and be patient as we journey through this together. Next, he says love is kind. Kindness is defined as being friendly, generous, and considerate. So it doesn't stop with patience. Once you've been patient with somebody, you need to also be friendly to them. Be generous towards them. Be considerate of them. Kindness is the second step in this rundown. Be patient with them. Be kind. Consider them. Treat them gently. And then he starts getting into some things that love isn't. Right? I'm a personal believer that you can learn just as much from a bad example as you can from a really good example, right? You can learn what not to be. And so he starts saying, these are things that you need to avoid if you're trying to love. He says, love is not jealous, it is not boastful, it is not proud, and it is not rude. Do you catch yourself being a jealous person? Always wanting what other people have? Love doesn't do that. Love also isn't boastful, right? Love doesn't let you know it's the best thing. Love doesn't shove things in your face and say, look how amazing I am, look how amazing this is. That's not love. Love isn't proud of itself. Love isn't too proud to get into the mess with somebody else. Love isn't rude. Love doesn't demand its own way. Man, that one is a hard one, I think. Love doesn't demand its own way. We live in this culture that tells us that we're always supposed to have it our own way, right? We're always supposed to get what we want. We're supposed to be served. If it's not your way, then you should find a new solution because you deserve to have what you want. You need to have it your way. If it's not your way, then something's not right. But man, love doesn't demand its own way. Love is different. It says love is not irritable. I'm going to say that one louder for myself. Love is not irritable. That's a hard one. I became a parent in the last year, okay? And I've learned all about irritability and what that means. And love is not irritable. And I actually think we live at such a pace in our lives that irritability comes really easy to us, right? We're so stressed, our schedules are so full that I think like if our anxiety level is like here, that's too high. The schedule and the pace we live at puts us right here. So it's very easy for us to be so irritable that we jump over that line quickly. But love is not irritable. Loving those around us means cutting out irritability and being patient and kind with those we interact with. Then we get to this next one, and I'll be, again, very honest with you guys. This one is super hard for me. Love keeps no record of being wronged. You can ask anybody close to me. I love rules. I love details. I love fairness. I need everything to be fair and just, right? And so I keep record of everything, right? It's all up here. So that when I do something, maybe that isn't very pleasing to the people that I live with. And they say, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, actually, on March 3rd at 4:17 in the afternoon, you did the same thing, so that justifies my behavior. It makes perfect sense in my head. But love doesn't do that. Thank goodness love doesn't do that. Love doesn't have a ledger. It doesn't keep track of the time someone has messed up and hold that over their head for eternity. That is huge. It does not rejoice about injustice. Love does not rejoice about injustice, but it rejoices whenever the truth comes out. I think I see this little couplet here as this, is love advocates for people. Love doesn't rejoice when things are unjust, but it rejoices when the truth wins out and the right thing happens. Love means advocating for justice and for truth, but hold on. Love is also patient and kind. And it's not proud. And it's not boastful. So when we're advocating for things that we believe are true, it's so important that we are kind and patient and not proud. We don't shove it in people's face. Love needs to be part of that advocating for justice and truth as well. Finally, we get to this tag here. It says, love never gives up. I think there might be a slide. Love never gives up, never loses faith. It's always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. That last point I talked about from verse 8, love is going to last forever. Love endures forever. But a quality of love is that it doesn't give up. It doesn't lose faith. It's always hopeful, and it endures through every circumstance. It endures through every circumstance. It's not going to get discouraged when something bad happens, and then it's like, well, I'm not going to love anymore. That's not love. Love never gives up. Love endures forever. And so what I want to do a little experiment here with you guys. I'm going to throw the verses we just read through on the screen, but I'm going to ask you in your head to fill in the blank and just see how you're doing, right? You don't have to do it out loud. But I wanted to walk through this just to see where we're at. So Jordan is patient and kind. Jordan is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Jordan does not demand his own way. Jordan is not irritable, and he keeps no record of being wronged. Jordan does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Jordan never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. That can be a tough exercise if you look at it that way. But do that. I really encourage you to do that and see which areas you think maybe you need some work in your life to be more loving. Because the bottom line is we are called to be loving. We are called to love people in this way. I came across another quote from the book we're reading as a staff, and I immediately filed it away and said, I got to use that when I preach about love, because it really hit me hard. The author is John Mark Comer, and he's talking about spiritual formation, right? Something that should be, if you're a follower of Jesus, spiritual formation is just this process of you becoming more and more like Jesus. Are we being formed in the image of Christ? And so the author says this. He says, love is the acid test of spiritual formation. The single most important question is, are we becoming more loving? Not, are we becoming more biblically educated or practicing more spiritual disciplines? Or are we more involved in the church? Those are all really good things, but not the most important thing. So I want you to ask yourself that question this morning. Are you becoming more loving? That's been the question that's been floating around my head the last few weeks as I prepared this message. Anytime I catch myself wanting to react in my flesh the way that I want to, I ask myself, ooh, is that loving? Should I have done that? Anytime I get cut off in traffic and I want to get mad, I'm like, ooh, is that loving? Even if I don't do anything with my car, if I'm thinking in my head, am I loving that person? If our goal is to become more and more like Jesus, I think we have no choice but to become more and more loving. God is love. So let's jump all the way back to our one verse for this week. 1 Corinthians 13:1. If I could speak all the languages of earth and of angels, but didn't love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. That's our one verse. My one challenge for you this week is going to be practice loving. Practice loving. That's your challenge for this week. This is a journey and not a destination that you're just going to arrive at, being loving, right? Unfortunately, I don't think anybody will ever say, accurately at least, Jordan is love, okay? That's not really the goal here. That's not a realistic endpoint for me. But I want to be a person who is striving to become more loving. I want to be the person who is becoming more patient, more kind, less jealous, boastful and proud, less irritable. I want to become more faithful, more hopeful, and more enduring through every circumstance. I think that's a realistic goal, becoming more and more like that every day. So practice loving, practice getting better at these qualities we talked through. We are on this journey together. And thank goodness we have the ultimate example of love as our guide. And that's Jesus, right? Maybe practicing loving for you this week looks like just opening your Bible and reading about how Jesus loved people and learning a little bit more about it. And that's the practice you do. Maybe it's an area that you know jumped out at you this morning and say, I got to work on that this week. Whatever it is, we can look to Jesus as our example. And he is calling us to follow him and to be more loving. And are you up to that challenge? Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for your love. I thank you that you loved us enough to give up your son, to have him die in our place so that we could be in relationship with you. I pray that as that reality sinks in, it changes who we are and how we interact with people and how loving we are, because we want others to know about that love. And if we know all the answers and we know all the right things to say, but it's not motivated and bathed in love, it is a noisy gong, a clanging cymbal, or a horrible tasting pancake. So I pray that this week you can help us practice becoming more loving, more patient, more kind. As we look to you for that, God, be with us this week as we interact with others. And I just pray that others could see you through the way that we treat one another and the conversations we have and the words we use, that it would all be patient, kind, and loving. In your son's name we pray. Amen.